Hey, yo, Mr. Miyagi, I got your bonsai box. It's time. What up, guys? Bobo here with BrassReel Brothers, back with the third installment of the Karate Kid trilogy. An unneeded but welcome threequel. Alright, so this bad boy right here is definitely love or hate. It's 50-50 in the Karate Kid fandom. I personally love it. I said in my last video of part 2 that I said it might be my favorite. And keep your eyes for part 3 coming up. Might be my favorite. So I just want to go ahead and clear this up. It's not my favorite one of the three, but it's definitely my favorite one to watch. Part 1 and 2 are truly awesome movies. They don't feel like they're going for the cash grab. This one, while it's still badass, it's definitely going a little bit for the cash grab. But that doesn't make me hate it. I love it. And this movie came out in 1989, a massive year for film. That's when the Tim Burton Batman movie came out, Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade, Back to the Future Part 2, Jason Takes Manhattan. So for me as a kid at that time, it was right in that moment where I was really getting into film, and so that year was just everything to me. Man, I remember as soon as we were in the theater, you see the Columbia TriStar logo come up and you hear that music. Again by Bill Conti. Fantastic. So like at the beginning of part 2 where they were rehashing the end of part 1 and then they just pick it up right there, they rehashed the end of part 1 and the beginning of part 2 where you see Kreese with his hamburger hands. It doesn't ignore part 2, but like all trilogies do, they kind of spin this back around and show you something from the first movie. And it pretty much just picks up with Kreese just on his downfall after the tournament. Kind of like the way they depict Johnny at the beginning of the Cobra Kai series. Lots of parallels there. They mentioned the second movie a couple times, like they mentioned Kumiko, he's talking to his mom on the phone, and they do the same thing with her like they did with Allie. They just brush over real quick in like 20 seconds.
And when is Kumiko arriving?
She's not. She got this great job with a dance company in Tokyo, and I guess she just couldn't say no, so.
But it's pretty much focusing on what happened to Kreese right after the events of part 1 and the beginning of part 2. Oh yeah, and something I forgot to say in the review of part 2. I love it when Miyagi and Daniel-san are walking away from Kreese when he's on the ground with his hamburger hands. And Daniel's like,
You could have killed him, couldn't you?
Hey.
Well, why didn't you then?
what do you mean, well, why didn't you then? You dumb Come on, Daniel-san. What do you think, Miyagi's just gonna waste his life away and go to prison and kill Kreese for you right there? Come on!
Come on!
But like I said, we're focusing on Kreese, and he's just got this rundown dojo now. Nobody likes him after the events of the All Valley tournament because he showed the public that he's a prick, so he can't pay his rent and all this stuff. So before you really even see Daniel-san and Miyagi as far as what they're doing now, it's really focusing on Kreese and his downfall. And he goes to his buddy, Terry Silver, for some help. And immediately it turns into some sort of like early 90s canon film. It's just great. I love it. Like the way they show Terry Silver's house, it just feels like some sort of base or something from an old canon movie, like a Chuck Norris film. So Terry Silver is played by the legendary, criminally underrated Thomas Ian Griffith.
Hey! Johnny!
Me and my buddies growing up in high school, especially my buddy Matt, we were always like these underdog actors. They were almost famous, but they were always in these like B-grade action films that were on HBO or Cinemax or straight to video. And Thomas Ian Griffith was like at the top of the list of those actors. If you turned on late night HBO or Cinemax when you were a kid in the 90s, chances are you would stumble upon some sort of Thomas Ian Griffith film. Karate Kid 3 was probably his biggest starring role, but he was in other movies like Excessive Force, Cracker Jack. And he starred as Dracula as that terrible John Carpenter movie called Vampires. Ugh. As soon as I saw Terry Silver as a kid in this movie doing his kata when Kreese goes to visit him, I loved it. Because I was already into actors like Van Damme, Steven Seagal, Chuck Norris, Schwarzenegger and Stallone, of course. So when I saw Terry Silver and the look they were going for with the ponytail, it was straight up ripping off Steven Seagal. And every person watching it knew it. But to me, that's what made the character even better. It was like a second-rate Steven Seagal. But pretty early on, we're seeing Kreese ask for all this help from Terry Silver, which, by the way, Terry lives in this badass house, which he's got like tons of servants everywhere. He's always signing papers and talking about how money's not an issue.
Screw the rent. What, do you think I bought that place for the rent? I bought it for you.
What the hell does he do? He mentions a few times he's with Dynatox Industries, and he's talking about nuclear waste occasionally, like when he's in the bathtub.
What do you mean you can't dump it in Borneo? Who in Borneo knows what chloride sludge is?
But it's so cheesy the way they depict his character as this just like gazillionaire of Dynatox Industries. What a terrible name. But I think that's what makes this movie great, is all the crappy stuff in there. It's kind of like Rocky 3. You know it's not as good as part 1 and 2, but it brought this new element of like sort of 80s cheeseballness to it that was just great. As I was saying earlier, we don't see Daniel-san and Miyagi until like 10 minutes into the movie. They're arriving back from Okinawa. Miyagi was trying to retire, but he spent all of his money saving the village in Okinawa, so now he's just back to square one. And Daniel-san, being the guy he is to Miyagi, loving him with all of his heart, wants to help him fulfill his dream by having a bonsai shop, which he ultimately does after Miyagi trying to stop him a few times. And they continue to build on the relationship with Miyagi and Daniel-san, which is great. In this one, you kind of see him start to butt heads a little bit, which I thought was a good dynamic to a relationship, especially if it's like a father-son thing. So the movie has cheesy elements as far as Terry Silver and Kreese and all that's concerned, but as far as Daniel-san and Miyagi's relationship and their part of the film, that is just completely going to the next level still. I love that. But cheeseball-wise, we've got John Kreese, Terry Silver, and Mike Barnes and his crew. God, it's so 90s. So now we got Mike Barnes, who gets hired by Terry Silver, and Terry Silver sent Kreese away to Tahiti for a little while to just relax, but not before Kreese had his one last request.
Make his knuckles bleed.
And I think it's so cool because it's tying it back to the hamburger fists. So Terry Silver, this millionaire, decides to go incognito, hire this dude Mike Barnes, the new bad boy of karate, blackmail Daniel-san into signing up for the All Valley Karate Championship again so Mike can beat him. Mike is like the new Johnny Lawrence. What a cheesy ass plot. A millionaire helping his old rundown buddy out who got embarrassed by an old man and a teenager at a karate tournament, and their goal is to ruin this still teenager. All right. Terrible plot line, I'll give it that. But because of the terrible plot line and the way Terry Silver is with Kreese and Mike Barnes, it just makes me love the movie so much. I can rewatch this movie 1,000 times over. And Thomas Ian Griffith is such an overactor, but it's fantastic. Like when he's sitting in the sauna and Kreese says the whole,
Make his knuckles bleed.
oh, I like that! I like that, Johnny!
Hey, I like that! Oh, I like that, Johnny! I'm gonna use that!
Terry Silver is too much. Too good. He's just hamming it up the whole movie. And the fact that Terry Silver just sets up this whole fake fight scene with Barnes to go mess with Daniel-san and convince Daniel-san he's this cool guy, this old karate guy. And he starts training Daniel-san under the Cobra Kai umbrella and basically tricking Daniel-san, messing with him, making him feel all this pain just to try to get him beat in the tournament by Mike Barnes in the end. I remember as a kid watching those scenes with Daniel-san training with Terry Silver, and he starts making his knuckles bleed and hurting his feet. And I'm just like, no, Daniel-san, what are you doing? And poor Miyagi's all over there getting his heart broken watching Daniel-san fall. Again, they touch on those moments with Miyagi and Daniel-san. I love that. Because their relationship is so important to these films. Like I said in the first review, without Pat Morita playing Miyagi's character and that relationship that him and Daniel-san have, the movies wouldn't be that good. And one of the most badass shots in cinematic history, in my opinion, when they're doing the kata on that mountain coast, and it's obviously like a helicopter shot, but it just pans out like super awesome. Very memorable. Everybody knows that scene. And it's maybe the most iconic scene in the Karate Kid franchise. And once Daniel-san realizes he's been under some sort of trick, it kind of reminds me of the Emperor and Luke Skywalker in Return of the Jedi. He comes to his senses, but once he goes to tell Silver he doesn't want to do it anymore, he gets bombarded with John Kreese and Mike Barnes. And it's just another scene that we can have of Miyagi whipping some dudes way younger than him. But unfortunately, the choreography and everything in this fight scene isn't that great. But we do get the whole, wah! I remember as a kid laughing my ass off at that. And just like the nose honk, I was doing that to everybody after I watched the movie. It wouldn't be a Karate Kid movie unless it had some sort of underlying lesson. In part one, you had the wax on, wax off thing. Part two, you had the drum technique.
Drum technique.
And in this one, you have the bonsais. They focus on the bonsai tree a lot in this one, which I think is really cool. It takes it a little bit to a more mature level.
Make it because have strong root. Just like you, Daniel-san. Inside you have strong root. No need nothing except what inside you to grow.
Man, I thought that's badass. Kind of gives me the chills a little bit. And there is a moment where a special bonsai tree gets broken with this girl who's not the love interest. Thought that was really weird in this movie to have a girl in it who's not a love interest. I don't know. Could have done without it. The movie's got a lot of emotional moments that'll give you chills, and most of those moments exist between Miyagi and Daniel-san. But all the other moments with Mike Barnes and Silver and Kreese and the plot in general, it's just super cheeseball. But like I said, it's what makes me love it. And just like all trilogies should do, it comes full circle to the first movie. They're back at the All Valley tournament. Daniel decides to sign this contract they've been trying to blackmail him to sign by whooping him up, destroying their bonsai shop, kicking the girl in the stomach. Hey! Man, what a bastard, Mike. But it's just like the first movie when they're at the tournament, but instead of Johnny, it's Mike Barnes. And Kreese is there, but he's got extra reinforcement this time with Terry Silver. So when it starts, Mike Barnes is just dominating Daniel-san like crazy. But Miyagi's on the side watching in the same suit that he had in the first movie. You got the same referee there, who's actually the trainer of all three films. He's a karate expert. You're hyped up at this point because it's part 3, it's the end. You're thinking something awesome is gonna happen, but it's definitely not as good of a fight choreography scene as the first film. But this one does have its moments. It totally kicks into gear when Daniel-san gets pushed over to Terry Silver. And now the real pain begins, Danny boy.
Now the real pain begins, Danny boy.
On your line.
Yeah! That's when I got super pumped up in the movie, and it starts to get happening a little bit at that point. But one of the moments that truly stood out for me and still stands out to me to this day, one of my favorite moments of the franchise, is when Daniel-san's on the ground and he's afraid. He's like, there's no way I can beat this guy. He's too good. And it's something I think is amazing in life that you got out of Miyagi's wisdom.
Mr. Miyagi, it's over. It's over. Forget about it.
No.
I'm afraid. Let's just get out of here. I want to go home.
Cannot, must not. It's okay to lose to opponents. Must not lose to fear.
Yo, I'm afraid.
I got chills thinking about that comment right now. It's okay to lose to an opponent, but it's not okay to lose to fear. That is fantastic. Words to live by, Miyagi. And that brings the emotional charge back into the scene. And what's great is he beats Mike Barnes with a kata. He does a kata on there and freaks Mike Barnes out. He doesn't know what to do. And that's beautiful because earlier when Terry Silver's fake training Daniel-san, he tells him you're not going to win with that kind of stuff. You can't beat him with that crane crap.
Think you can rely on that crane crap?
Oh, but he shows him up, Terry. It's a cool way to beat him. It's classy. Miyagi said, you still have best karate inside you.
Tell us how your best karate still inside you.
This movie's a really fun final act to a trilogy. Like I said, did it need to be made? Probably not, but I love it. And like I said, I watch it probably more than the other two. It's not quite as good as the first two films. The first two films truly are actually good movies. Take the karate out of it, take all that out of it. They're actually really well done films. The third one, it definitely just felt like they were going in for a cash grab, but I still loved it, and it still holds up enough. It's not bad. It isn't a crappy sequel. It's just not quite as good as the first two. But if you love Cobra Kai and Karate Kid, then it's awesome and you'll love this too. Guys, thanks for clicking this and tuning in for some more popcorn. I really appreciate y'all. This has been so much fun going down Karate Kid Hill Lane. If you've been enjoying my videos, hit the like button. The like button does help. And since I was all pumped up after Cobra Kai Season 3 and on this martial arts kick, I decided to keep it rolling. So tune into my next video coming up with Showdown in Little Tokyo, starring Dolph Lundgren and Brandon Lee. Look for BrassReel Brothers on Facebook. Look for Bobby Williams on Facebook. And you can find me on Twitter, BrassReel Bobby at BrassReel. And if you haven't done so already, hit that subscribe button so you can help me make it to the top. And as always, if life gives you lemons, make some hot, fresh popcorns. Chaos!